Welcome to the August 6, 2026 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. I believe Board Member Beams is absent tonight. Board Member Scales.
Present.
Board Member Langley's present. Board Member Smith.
Present.
And Board Member Fleschauer.
Here.
All right, so we are mostly here tonight. Missed last month, so I feel like it's been months since we've been here. Still hot though, still hot and humid.
That's right.
All right, next is citizen comments. This is open for citizens to be heard on any issue or concern. If you'd like to speak on a specific item on the agenda, please wait until the citizen comment period for that item. For all citizen comments, please fill out a speaker card and hand that to staff. Come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 2 minutes. Are there any citizens who would like to speak to the commission at this time? We'll have individual items where you can also speak on those, but this is kind of general comment period. So any citizens who would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the minutes. Consideration of approval of the June 4, 2026 meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the minutes.
Motion for approval made by Board Member Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Fleschauer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Don't see anyone jumping up and down, so minutes are approved. All right, we have our first kind of official item tonight. It's going to be item number 2, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to back up. We'll do announcements. I skipped over the most important part.
No announcements, thank you.
Wanted to wish Shanna congratulations on her new role coming up here, it sounds like. So hope you stick with us, but if you don't, we'll miss you. So, all right. That was the best part of the evening, probably right there. So item number 2, we're warming up for the real work here. A variance request to allow a proposed principal building to have a maximum front yard setback of 107 feet from Riverside Drive. So that's the first variance request. The second one is a variance request to allow a proposed principal building to have a maximum front yard setback of 220 feet from Oak Meadow Drive for the property located at 880 Oak Meadow Drive. Staff.
Yes, thank you. To start with the background on the item, this 13.3 acre lot is located at 880 Oak Meadow Drive and is zoned RC6 Regional Commerce District. The owner wishes to develop the parcel with a 2-story, 100,000 square foot retail space. There is no site plan submitted for the project. The plans provided for this project represent the desired design of the site. This lot has some constraints to consider. The property has a border of slopes greater than 20% along Riverside Drive, Oak Meadow Drive, and the access drive to Home Depot that runs along the back of the property. There are also overhead power lines running along Riverside Drive within the public utility and drainage easement, which extend 40 feet into the property from the right-of-way. The property is considered a corner lot, as it has property lines along both Riverside Drive and Oak Meadow Drive. Therefore, the applicant is requesting 2 variances. Staff also wanted to note that this property has come before the Board of Zoning Appeals twice in the past. If you have questions about that, I can get into those later. So now into staff analysis. For the request number 1 to increase the maximum front yard setback from 30 to 107 feet from Riverside Drive. I won't read the criteria, but if you would like me to clarify those, I can. For criteria 1, the property has a border of slopes greater than 20% along Riverside Drive, Oak Meadow Drive, and the access drive to Home Depot. There are also overhead power lines running along Riverside Drive, which are within the public utility and drainage easement, which extend 40 feet into the property from the right-of-way. The maximum setback for landscape frontage is 30 feet. Given the topographical constraints and the depth of the easement, it would not be possible for the setback to be less than 40 feet. Therefore, staff finds that this criteria is met. For number 2, staff finds that the strict application of a provision enacted under the zoning ordinance would result in an exceptional practical difficulties for the owner of the property. Due to the slopes in the public utility drainage easement, the front yard setback must be more than the required maximum of 30 feet. The property cannot comply with the strict application of the maximum setback requirements in this situation. The setback must be more than 40 feet to accommodate the steep slope and easement along Riverside Drive. Staff finds that this criteria is met. For criteria number 3, The design of the site would not be a detriment to the public good, but it does impair the intent of the zoning ordinance. The intent of the zoning ordinance is to reinforce the principles of Envision Franklin by keeping buildings close to the street. While this site does require at least a 40-foot maximum setback, requesting a 107-foot setback does not seem necessary. The applicant's frontage breakdown exhibit shows 25 feet in front of the building for pedestrian circulation, but the zoning ordinance only requires 8-foot sidewalks when along a building. And the desired 9.5-foot canopy is not a city requirement, so it is a self-imposed hardship. That means that the building could be 17 feet closer to the street. Additionally, the city does not require a maximum of 1% cross slope for sidewalks, as mentioned in the letter. The city requires a maximum cross slope of 2%, and the ADA guidelines allow for a maximum cross slope up to 2.08%. An ADA ramp would also very likely be an option to accommodate for the slight slope in this case. It does not seem that the applicant has explored all of the options and therefore has not shown an effort to achieve the most minimal deviation from the zoning ordinance. Staff finds that this criteria is not fully met. I can explain further if you would like. For request number 2, to increase the maximum front yard setback from 30 feet to 220 feet from Oak Meadow Drive. For criteria 1, there is a large area of existing stormwater infrastructure in the frontage area along Oak Meadow Drive. In order to avoid the existing stormwater infrastructure and provide fire access around the building cannot be located less than 30 feet from Oak Meadow Drive. Staff finds this criteria is met. For criteria number 2, a majority of the stormwater facilities were already implemented with the construction of Riverside Drive. Complying with the front setback requirements would cause an undue hardship for the owner because they would have to remove and redesign the existing stormwater infrastructure that is functioning properly. Additionally, any additional stormwater capture required by the development would be negatively affected if the building were pulled closer to Oak Meadow Drive and occupied much of the naturally lower elevations on the site. Staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria number 3, the design of the site would not be a detriment to the public good and would not impair the intent of the zoning ordinance. The intent of the zoning ordinance is to reinforce the principles of Envision Franklin by keeping buildings close to the street. Considering the current stormwater infrastructure and the curved front lot line, the building is being pulled as far forward towards Oak Meadow Drive as possible with the conditions. The proposed design shows an effort to meet the intent of the ordinance and achieve the most minimal deviation possible from this zoning ordinance requirement. Staff finds that this criteria is met. So for our recommended motion, staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to deny the variance request to allow the proposed principal building to have a maximum front yard setback of 130 feet from Riverside Drive. No, I'm sorry, that means 107 feet from Oak Meadow Drive, from Riverside Drive. We recommend denial of the 107-foot setback from Riverside Drive because the criteria for granting the variance have not all been met, and approve the variance request to allow the proposed principal building to have a maximum front yard setback of 220 feet from Oak Meadow Drive for the property located at 880 Oak Meadow Drive because the criteria for granting the variance have been met. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, staff. I think we can probably come back to questions maybe in a second. Let's go ahead, if the applicant's present, if you'd like to step forward for us and just state your name and then give us any other details and just walk us through the request.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Greg Gamble, and I'm representing the applicant, the landowner, Franklin Capital Investments. In the submittal, we referenced Living Spaces. Living Spaces is a furniture company. They plan to build a 2-story building here between 100,000 square feet and 118,000 square feet. This variance request, though, relates to any building. It really relates to any building that you put on here. It's not specific to Living Spaces. It's not specific to a use. In 2022, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved a variance to allow parking to be between the building and Riverside Drive. In 2025, the Board of Zoning Appeals approved an 80-foot front yard setback for a building just north of here on the same road. Both of those proposals have gone away. Both of those, or at least the one from 2022, that variance has expired. And we're bringing to you tonight a kind of a higher level study. At the time in 2022, when that variance for parking in front of the building was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals, there was a request to bring some more information forward, and we've done that tonight. Do you have this submittal package? If you would go to page 3 for me, I'd appreciate it. Yes. Shown here on the right side is a power line easement. It's an overhead power line easement. It is a major transmission line. This is Middle Tennessee Electric, and the Middle Tennessee Electric does not want this line underground. They want it above ground. It's a 20-foot wide easement. That 20-foot wide easement sits 20 feet away from the right-of-way of Riverside Drive. So we've got a 40-foot distance in there. On the left side of the screen, you have another area there shown in orange. Those are 3-to-1 slopes. So there's kind of a plateau that sits on top of this as it grades down to Riverside Drive on one side, and then as it grades down to Summerbee on the other. If you'll go to the next page for me. The existing zoning of the property is RC6, so that allows for a 6-story tall building. And buildings along local streets, being both Riverside Drive and Oak Meadow, require a front yard setback between 5 feet and 30 feet. And that's really what we're talking about tonight. Because of the infrastructure that's out there now, we cannot comply with that. So the variance that we're requesting tonight, if you'll go to the next page there, Amy, that'd be great. We are showing a distance of 107 feet from the right-of-way of Riverside Drive to the face of the building. This is not an urban building. This is more of a suburban building. We're hoping to have some landscape at the building foundation along the frontage of this building to create the right streetscape. In conversations with Andy King, our fire marshal, he is requiring, because this is a 2-story furniture store, a 26-foot fire emergency lane around the building. With our initial submittal to you several months ago, we had proposed parallel parking alongside the frontage of this building, and that was requiring 130 feet in order to provide the additional on-street parking. We have since removed the on-street parking. We've pushed the building as close as we believe that we can get it. I handed out to you earlier an email from Andy King, our fire marshal, and it states, as I understand, a 26-foot fire lane is required for a 2-story, 100,000 square foot gross building that's taller than 30 feet. Additionally, we have limitation due to high-tension power lines that are located between Riverside Drive and the proposed building, which restricts our ability to utilize the public right-of-way, roadway for fire apparatus access. If you turn a couple of pages in, you'll see Appendix D. This was adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen several years ago. This is fire apparatus access roads. And if you turn to the very last page, I've highlighted for you 3 very important items. The first of which is the width. Aerial fire apparatus access roads shall have a minimum unobstructed width of 26 feet. So that's where that number is coming from, this regulation. Under proximity to building, 1 or more of the required access routes meeting this condition shall be located not less than 15 feet and not greater than 30 feet from the building and shall be positioned parallel to one entire side of the building. The side of the building on which the aerial fire apparatus access road is positioned shall be approved by the fire code official. Then lastly, obstructions. Overhead utility and power lines shall not be located over the aerial fire apparatus access road or between the aerial fire access road and the building. Based upon these 3 items, which we check every single box, we are asking for, Amy, if you'll turn to the next page, then this shows the section here, which shows you the 26-foot drive lane, which is required by fire. The distance between 15 and 30 feet, which we have 25 That's for the ladder angle. It's so that the ladder has the right angle for the fire department to access the roof. Yes, we do have an overhang in front of the building of 9 foot, I think it's 7 inches, which is our canopy overhang that just allows for storm protection as you're coming in and out of the building if it's pouring down rain or snowing. But this distance here is not tied to zoning code, which Amy's correct, the 8-foot sidewalk. This is tied to the fire marshal's regulations in this Appendix D. And so that's really why we're setting the building where we are. We do have 3-to-1 existing slopes coming from Riverside Drive up to the building. The finished floor elevation of this building from natural grade to where it's being proposed is dropping down about 11 feet. So it's a pretty good distance that's going to have to drop in order to get the 8% slope that we need from that drive aisle into this frontage road. And then we are providing the frontage road wraparound for the fire department access. So we really believe that we spent a lot of time figuring out the math on this, figuring out the numbers on this. We believe that by eliminating the on-street parking, we can push the building even closer to Riverside Drive and feel comfortable that we are really where we need to be. I appreciate your consideration on both of these variance requests. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll move to citizen comments. Are there any citizen comments on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment? Motion made by Board Member Scales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so public comment is closed. I definitely have a couple questions, probably of staff, and just kind of working through all the regulations. And I know I think big picture, we're looking at a variance request. We're not approving a specific site plan because we're still conceptual on that. I think one thing I was just thinking through was like all these requirements, there's no guarantee. It doesn't seem like that if we approve this variance that when the site plan comes in, I mean, I've heard parallel parking, I've heard other things. So that may be forthcoming, probably not an issue tonight. It would let the property owner at least figure out like where do we place buildings and work through some of those details later. I guess the other kind of big question in my mind, and then I'll open it up to the other board members. I kind of started here not to step on your feet.
It's cool.
But I guess we've got fire code requirements, we've got zoning requirements, and they're in conflict with one another. How would staff sort of address that through a site plan review? Because I'm sure that'll come up at some point in the process anyway.
So let me see if I can answer this succinctly. Without the variance, they would be stuck in the site plan stage because right now, the requirement for the building along Riverside Drive is to be no farther than 30 feet from Riverside Drive. So where that building lands beyond 30 feet would be reviewed through the site plan process, and things like fire lanes and how the fire truck gets in and out of the site and where they would be able to pull up along the side of the building and be that 15 to 30 feet. That would be determined in the site plan process. I think there's assumption being made right now that it has to be along the Riverside Drive frontage, and I can't tell you today if that's where it has to be or not. So this idea of, well, I have to have so much feet because I have to have the fire truck parked there and the angle of the ladder, we haven't gone through that exercise yet with fire through the site plan process. So I think to answer your question, without a variance, they will not be able to get their site plan approved, but they
Right.
could get it reviewed. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
I'll open it up. Anybody else have questions, kind of details?
I know that we had approved 80 before, right? And we had talked, this is 107, and we had talked that maybe 90 was on the, didn't I hear something about 17? We're within 17 feet of getting, no? Okay. Maybe I misunderstood as you were reading through it.
What I said in my staff report was that there seems to be some discrepancy on why it needs to be more than, let me pull up a picture. So to look at this diagram, I think, so we already know that it needs to get at least to 40 feet because
Right.
there's an easement there that can't be moved. That's someone else's
Right.
easement.
Right,
There's understanding from staff that there definitely needs to be a fire lane of 26 feet as part of the setback, because a fire truck does have to get on this side of the building, and they can't, because of the topography, according to Andy King, he can't use Riverside Drive for his fire truck parking.
right.
So you have 40 plus 26. The rest of that distance, staff can't find a rationale for why it has to be adding up to 107.
But you have to add the ladder repose to that.
Potentially, I don't know so the way I read, and this is just me on the fly, and Andy King's not here as the fire marshal.
Right,
So if you want that question really answered,
yeah,
his perspective, you could defer and we could bring him back. But the way I read this section is that one of the access routes meeting this condition shall be located not less than 15 feet and not greater than 30. So only one side of the building where there is a fire access has to be this 15 to 30 foot away from the building. But we haven't determined that it has to be this side.
right.
So staff's still at a loss at why it has to be 107. This one definitely fits criteria 1 and 2, but staff had problems with the
3.
distance and what number 3 is. Whether or not it's what we consider a minimum deviation from the rules.
Okay,
All that makes sense to me. I think taking a step back, just looking at this, the map, just pulling it up, location, and we can get into that probably when a motion's made, but just location's definitely unique to me here. I mean, we're right adjacent to I-65. I'm just looking at kind of context and everything as well. Any other questions at all, kind of just facts of what we're looking at, or?
Would staff find value in having Andy King present to make comments if we were to defer this item?
If you had questions about, my initial reaction is if you have questions about the fire code, yes, I'm not an expert on the fire code. I don't know that Andy would be able to completely analyze the site, so I don't know if you're wanting that, I don't know that he can provide that analysis on just a potential design.
Okay, thank you.
Or is there a motion on the item? I mean, we can start with a motion, then have other discussion.
yeah.
I'll move to,
And we do have two variances, so we can
Yeah.
split them or take them together, your preference there.
let's do this then, let's make it, I move to approve the second variant request, which was the request to allow a proposed principal building to have a maximum front yard setback of 220 feet from Oak Meadow Drive for the property located at 880 Oak Meadow Drive because the criteria for granting a variance have been met.
Okay, motion for approval of the second variance request, so that's the one relating to the 220-foot setback. So that motion's made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Fleischauer. Discussion.
I don't think there's any dispute that each of the criteria have been met for this particular item. That stormwater area is what's really kind of the defining feature for each of the criteria. And so I think based on the presentation by the applicant and what we have here in the staff report, each of the criteria have been met for that variance request.
Okay, any additional discussion? All right, so let's take a vote on this variance request then. So Board Member Scales,
Approve.
Board Member Langley, approved. Board Member Smith,
Approve.
and Board Member Fleischauer.
Approved.
All right, so this variance request, that second one is approved. So let's move to the other variance. We'll kind of go through that same process. Is there a motion?
Give me 1 second here. I move to approve the variance request to allow a proposed principal building to have a maximum front yard setback of 107 feet from Riverside Drive because the criteria for granting a variance have been met.
Okay, motion for approval. So that motion for approval is a little bit different, I guess, than the staff recommend. It's 107 feet, just clarifying, not 130 feet. So we're
Correct.
reducing that a little bit. Okay, so motion for approval to 107 feet. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Board Member Fleischauer. Discussion.
Since we already approved 80 before, I know that this is a troubled parcel. Not real sure that the 107 is required, as Amy was saying. I'm almost, what if we gave him, since 80's already been approved before, what if we gave him 90 in lieu of 107? And that way he could take it and go back and see if he can make that work. That's within 10 feet that we had approved before.
You want to hear from it? I'm open to it.
Yeah. I have to amend the motion if that's what we want to do, correct? So I would like to amend the motion at this point. In lieu of 107, I would like to amend the motion to 90 feet
So that would be-
setback.
so I guess William would need to amend it, right? Process-wise.
Set the record.
Well, you have, the motion's on the floor with a second, so there's a motion to amend it, you need a second for that amendment.
Is there a second on the amendment to reduce the variance to, you said, is it 90?
90.
90 feet? Is there a second on that motion?
I can't second my own amendment.
If there's not a second, then that motion will fail. I will,
Go ahead, go ahead.
so you made a motion, that, our original motion's still there. We're working our way up or down the ladder, whichever way you look at it.
Back to the bottom.
Yep, so your motion was to,
Approve the 107.
yep. Okay, I will second that motion. So,
And then, can we hear from the applicant now, or?
You're looking at me, yes, you can.
Perfect.
You can ask whatever you want.
yeah, why don't you come up
Yeah, yeah.
again, Greg, and just help us with
Can you
questions?
bring this page up? It's page number 7. I think this next slide is extremely helpful.
The one question I do want to ask, and this will go right to the heart of it.
Get your microphone.
Sorry, my bad. Sorry about that. My fellow commissioner asked about reduction to 90 feet. Can you talk to us about how that affects what you're proposing, if at all?
I can. On the existing condition sheet, I showed you the 3-to-1 slopes from Riverside Drive underneath the power line poles as they're coming up to where the kind of plateau area is. This slide here is very telling. I didn't mention it in my presentation, but the existing grade of Riverside Drive at the entrance is 600. This is in the submittal justification letter that was provided to you. It's page number 7. And this driveway entrance is as close to Oak Meadow Drive as the City of Franklin's regulations will allow from a driveway standpoint. So this is where it's required to be located. The existing grade at Riverside Drive is 692 feet in elevation, with an 8% slope coming up to the fire lane. We need that amount of distance. That, in that perspective, or that section that was shown by Amy on the previous slide, it showed the 40-foot of easement and distance offset, and then that 16 feet. That 16 feet is necessary to achieve that 8% slope coming in off of the drive. Then we have a 2% cross slope on the 26-foot drive. It can't be more than that because the fire rigs have to come down. Andy King has told us for a 100,000 square foot, 2-story building, that's a 50,000 square foot first floor, that he wants fire access all the way around it because it's a furniture store. That's not a part of our hardship because the hardship really relates to any building. But for a furniture store, he wants access all the way around it. And then we have the ladder zone, that 25 feet to the building. So that's how we came up with 107 feet. That's how we came up with 107 feet. Again, we had it at 130 when we had on-street parking there, pushed the building further back. We said, let's get rid of the on-street parking and get as close to this road as we possibly can. So thank you for your consideration.
If we were reduced to 90 feet, how how would that affect the 2% slope for
Sure.
fire vehicles?
Sure, so on this slide here, you're seeing that the existing grade is at 708. And my client is proposing to lower the entire grade to 697.
11 feet, you said?
11 feet of material that has to come off this site in order to get the building, just so we can come in and create this fire road around the site. So
So you'd have to
to
take
go to
the site
90, we're
down.
talking about dropping another 3 feet.
Yeah.
At just some point, it just becomes economically unfeasible.
Gotcha.
I think question for staff on this one. I keep coming back and I'm thinking about the parallel parking. Would the zoning require parallel parking all along that Riverside Drive frontage?
No, it would
Okay.
not. The frontage would be the road Riverside Drive.
Okay.
And there's not parking required along Riverside Drive.
I got you. That's good. All right, so we've got a motion, we've got a second. So motion for approval, just kind of recapping, 107 feet variance approvals. We got Scales and then Langley for the second. Let's go one by one of the vote. So Board Member Scales,
Approve?
Board Member Langley approved, Board Member Smith,
Approve.
and Board Member Fleschauer.
Approved.
All right, so second variance request for 107 feet is approved. All right, so next is item number 3. It's a variance request to allow the principal building and accessory structure to encroach up to 30 feet into the 60-foot front setback along MacCatcher Memorial Parkway for the property located at 935 Lewisburg Avenue. Staff. No rush here. It's like going solo. You did an awesome job on the last item, just going through it, so.
Okay, thank you. So the background information on this item. The subject property is located at 935 Lewisburg Pike and is zoned Residential 1 District, R1. The applicant is proposing a 7,068 square foot house with a 1,839,000 square foot accessory structure. The property is located at the corner of Lewisburg Pike and MacHatcher Memorial Parkway, so it has 2 front setbacks. Residential 1 District requires 60-foot front yard setbacks, so the property is required to be 60 feet from both Lewisburg Pike and MacHatcher Parkway. There is a depression in topography in the front yard area along Lewisburg Pike that tends to hold water, so the applicant is proposing to locate the house farther back from Lewisburg Pike. The applicant has stated that this is due to the existing head walls outfalling from Lewisburg Pike. In order to verify this, staff did a search for a drainage easement along Lewisburg Pike. Staff was not able to locate any easements associated with the stormwater conveyance from Lewisburg Pike through the property. A full title search and/or information request from TDOT would be necessary to verify this. In the absence of existing drainage easements, alterations of the front yard area should not hinder the historic flow of stormwater through the property, but alterations of the conveyance may be permitted. Staff would also like to note that this property is currently a tract of land that will need to be platted before the home could be constructed. The land seems to meet the criteria for the base zoning district to plat the lot, although initial investigation found that a small sewer extension may be needed before the lot could be considered buildable. With this in mind, the setbacks are not yet established, so this variance is asking for relief from the setbacks that will be required to be platted prior to construction. So it's just essentially something to put on the plat once the lot is platted. So for staff analysis, criteria 1. Staff does not find any extraordinary conditions of this property that would prevent development of a house and accessory structure within the setbacks on the property. While it is unique that the property has some topography changes in the front yard and stormwater conditions to mitigate, that does not necessarily prevent alterations or grading in order to bring the house further forward and comply with the setback requirements. It is not uncommon for properties to require grading and stormwater alterations in order to develop. Additionally, it seems that the house could be redesigned to meet the setback requirements, and the submitted materials do not prove that other options were explored in order to comply with the zoning ordinance requirements. Staff finds that the criteria is not met. Criteria 2. Staff finds that the strict application of the zoning ordinance would not result in peculiar or exceptional practical difficulties or exceptional or undue hardship upon the owner of the property. The variance request is unique to the applicant's proposed plan and not generally to all potential designs of the site. It appears to staff that the applicant could redesign the plan for a site that meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. It is the expectation of the city that an applicant designs their sites in a way that meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance and not use the variance process to avoid inconvenience. Staff finds that the proposed plan introduces a self-imposed hardship, one that could likely be resolved by redesigning to meet the zoning ordinance. Staff finds that this criteria is not met. Criteria 3. Staff finds that this would not be a detriment to the public good and would not impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The property line along Matt Hatcher Memorial Parkway is currently lined with trees which provide screening from the street. While staff does not know if these trees will always remain in place, they currently provide screening. Part of the intent of the zoning ordinance requirement is to have houses consistently set back from the street for residential neighborhoods. In this case, the requested encroachment is along a moderate high-speed road without houses with clearly consistent setbacks and is surrounded by a variety of zoning districts and uses, not just R1 residential houses. Staff finds that the proposed encroachment into the front setback along Matt Hatcher would not be a detriment in this case. Staff finds that this criteria is met. Recommended motion. Staff recommends the Board of Zoning Appeals move to deny the variance request to allow the principal building and accessory structure to encroach up to 30 feet into the 60-foot front setback along Matt Hatcher Memorial Parkway for the property located at 935 Lewisburg Avenue because the criteria for granting the variance have not all been met. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, staff. If the applicant's present, if you'd like to step forward for us and add any additional comments.
It's Tim Turner, president of T-Square Engineering. We are representing the property owner, Jay Luna. So we have a couple of encumbrances that we feel cause hardship on this property. One, as Amy said, the topo there in the front. There's a low area that was created, and I can give you the inverts of the pipes that TDOT has put into the property that show a low area, and we're trying to build a house outside that low area, up on the higher part of the property. So we got an irregular shaped property, triangular shaped property that's got 2 front yard setbacks, one of them off of Matt Hatcher, which is what we're asking for the variance for, from 60 foot to 30 foot. There is, just like Amy said, a lot of tree screening from there. The property line to Matt Hatcher is about 150 feet away. So the main thing that we're trying to do is get the house built back to stay out of that low area. I mean, builders don't like to build in fill material. So we're just trying to stay out of that, and that's kind of like in a flood area right there, or not a flood area, but it floods right there. The contour in the center of the low area is at 649, 48, 47, 46, 46, 45. And the elevation at the property line at Matt Hatcher is 648. So water does just sit there. And so we're trying to get the house pushed back so we can stay out of that area. Well, and so with that, that's why we're asking for a variance to be able to push the house back to stay on top of that high area. The high area is about at 650. So it gets us out of that low area that builds up to 648. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll probably have some more for you here in a couple minutes, but.
Okay. Could I pass a map out that shows the distances from Lewisburg Pike to the adjoining property homes?
Yep, you sure can. If you can get those to staff for us, and they'll kind of bring them up here to us, that would be great. If you don't have enough copies too, we can share. We're close enough if we need to spread them around.
And the site plan is put up there
All right, so let's move next to citizen comments. Are there any citizen comments on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close.
Motion made by Board Member
Second.
Fleschauer, second by Board Member Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. I was looking at the distances here, just on even the client exhibit, like the one that we have now, but also the client packet. We've got a outline kind of at the adjacent. As I was driving here tonight, I come this same direction, so I was like, man, we should have just done this meeting on site, except for the 95-degree weather. But I guess the adjacent property, it's, a little bit closer. I don't know how far that is from, and I think we probably have that outlined here on our exhibit. It looks like the adjacent property is 142 feet off Lewisburg, and then this one proposed is like 190 feet. That's not looking at the setbacks. That's probably distance from, I guess, back right away.
That's right. Yeah, front setback is 60 feet.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board at all, the applicant or staff?
My question, yeah. I'm sorry, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. During your initial presentation, you said your focus was making sure you were, as much as you could be, on kind of the 650 elevation versus the 648. Was that right?
Well, the 648 is the elevation at Mac Hatcher that water has to build up to get out. So the 650 contour is about right where the front portion of the house is going, maybe a little bit, maybe around the 649 contour, but that's why we're trying to get up there. I mean, we do know that we're going to have to try to mitigate or do something with that stormwater, but we just want to get up on the high side of the hill to keep, I mean, it's low all the way around it.
Yeah.
If you look at the topo,
Yeah.
and if you pull up the site plan, is the site plan on this?
So
How
I'm
low
curious
is
about.
that, Tim? How low is that in that front corner? Where
Front-
he was, where they say had the house has to go? What's the elevation there?
At the 60 foot,
Yeah,
it's about 647 or so.
so he'd have to fill how many feet?
If we went all the way up to 60-foot setback,
Yeah,
we're going to be right in the middle of the 60-foot setback is at 646 at the low spot.
That's a good image there. You've got pulled up, maybe.
Yeah. Yes,
To
I'm-
zoom
Yeah,
down
so
on
you
that
can
screen.
see, you can see where I've got a spot elevation in the center there, Jeff.
yeah,
Okay, that's the center of the low spot.
okay.
And you can see the line to the left of that is the 60-foot front setback. So if we put it up there, it's going to be right in the middle of the hole. So that's why we pushed it back. You can see those contours going up on the right-hand side.
Right.
So that's why we pushed the house back to get out of that area. And the front of the house is about at the elevation. If you look at Mac Hatcher, there's an elevation that comes into the property. That's 648.
Right.
It's,
So what staff is saying is, if Jay would just come in there and build that up a couple feet, he could put the house where they want him to put it. Obviously.
Build the low area up.
Yeah,
Well, and I don't know that we're saying exactly that, if you don't mind me.
no, I want you to tell me
Interjecting.
what you think, yeah.
So the other part of our analysis is that, the issue in question is to have this structure, the accessory structure, impede 30 feet into a 60-foot setback.
Okay,
The rationale is that, well, this entire structure needs to be pushed back so far into the tightness of the triangle. That's why that structure has to be in the 30-foot setback. Staff's other opinion is that you can design a house in a lot of different ways, and we're not sure why this accessory structure has to be in that exact location.
Got you.
Because is there something about the site other than, like in that back area? We haven't been given that information, why that couldn't move somewhere else.
It could actually just be preference.
Could you respond to that question, please?
Why does that have to be put there?
Yes, sir.
To be honest with you, this is what was given to us from the architect, and that they have a client that's already, this is the house they picked out.
I understand.
That's
I
not a
understand.
great answer for you.
But it's the honesty, and I appreciate that. That's it.
I mean, I'm just the
Been there,
engineer.
done, I understand. Been there, done that.
I'm just the engineer, man.
Yeah.
This is what we were given, and so, us as engineers, we like to stay out of any flood problems or
Yeah.
low spots or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Get it up on the high ground. But to answer your question, could that be shifted over? I can't answer that. This is what they gave us. This is what their client, that I guess they've already got a customer on this. This is what they want to live in. And so, this property has 2 front yard setbacks. It's irregular shape. It's got 2 front yard setbacks. There is no way we can tie on to Mac Hatcher. Usually a front yard means, okay, you could turn your house and you could tie into Mac Hatcher. We can't do that. So I'm just saying a side yard setback in R1 is 25 feet, okay? If this was considered a front on Lewisburg Pike, a side on Mac Hatcher, and a side on Jay Luna's side of the property,
Right.
then we're not even asking to go to 25 feet. We're just asking to go to 30 feet. So give us 2 side yards in the front. Because this is irregular shape, it really doesn't even have a rear setback. That's all we're asking. We're asking to go 30 feet into a 60-foot setback that has 2 front yard setbacks. That's what happens when you have corner lots. But normally corner lots, you've got two roads that you could tie into.
Right.
You could have your driveway coming in one side, or you could have a driveway, and then if you're coming in over here, that's your front yard. So a lot of places, and I work in many different municipalities, a lot of places is if you pick this as your front yard, then that front yard, they allow you to go to half of it. That's what they do in Williamson County. But this is your front yard, you can go, that front yard, you can make half the size, 60 to 30. That's all we're asking. That's all. And to be honest with you, I can't answer that question.
And I appreciate
I
that.
have thought about that myself. All I know is that this is the plan that Peter Shea designed, is given to us, that they have a customer, that this is what he wants to build, and this is what I was told to do. And I think it's a reasonable ask, but I understand what the regs say. So that's where we are. We're asking for 2 sides, or not even a side on this side. We're asking for more than a side and a front yard.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate that.
It's the most honest answer I've heard all night, just because they wanted to.
Do what he said.
That's the most honest answer you heard.
I actually respect that, honestly.
Make something up.
Any other questions on kind of facts of? If not, is there a motion?
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to approve the variance request to the principal building and accessory structure to encroach up to the 30-foot into the 60-foot setback along Hatcher Parkway for the property located at 935 Lewisburg Avenue. And the reason being is because of the proximity to Mac Hatcher and the fact that there's no access.
Okay, motion for approval made by Board Member Flushauer. Is there a second? I'll second that motion. Discussion.
You can sit down. No. Riddle me this, Batman. Would there be any value in asking the applicant to evaluate or explore other orientations on this site?
There may be. What troubles me is a lot of times when these guys do their layout, they base their layout on the neighbor's property, where the neighbor's house is, where the neighbor's detached structure is. a lot of times they don't want them lining up completely from a privacy standpoint. So that probably has something to do with the way he's oriented the parcel. And the other thing is with Mac Hatcher right there, I agree with Tim, there's no access on and off of Mac Hatcher. He's stuck coming off of Lewisburg Pike. So I think that warrants consideration.
Yeah, I look at this, I mean, to me, it's definitely a uniquely shaped property. Could that accessory building be moved? Yes. I do think, we're only looking at boxes on a flat screen, so it's not the 3D part. My guess is just looking at that layout, there's living room, there's kitchen somewhere in there, so they've placed this. Looks like there's an exit, there's some kind of connection to the accessory building. So to me, it's definitely unique. I feel like it meets the 3 criteria. It's a uniquely shaped lot. We've got floodplain on the back. We've got Mac Hatcher frontage on one side. We've got a lot of, we'll definitely be removing trees if the final product ends up where it is on the map, but there's,
I think a lot of that tree you see, it's a shadow coming across because I don't have the zoom out, or you might see it on that one over there, but you can see the shadow of the tree. So the trees are closer to the
Back
property
at you.
line. That's, a lot of that is shadow of the trees coming over. So we're not getting into the trees with the building.
Okay. With the accessory structure.
That's right.
yeah, and your exhibit there shows that pretty well. I can kind of see shadows in the tree line. So I don't know, it won't be visible, in my opinion, probably from Mac Hatcher, maybe in the winter, if it's not evergreens through there. So that's why I seconded the motion, just kind of looking at this before the meeting, driving through the area. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings about this one. I'm being a bit of a cynic, wondering if part of the idea might be to use that depressed area in front and make a lake or a pond or some kind of water feature in front of the house, which we've seen on Lewisburg Pike, not in front, but onto the side. And I also, but it is a unique property. It's, Mac Hatcher. Does somebody want to build on Mac Hatcher? I don't know that I would want to put a
don't
big
think I
house
would,
on
but
Mac Hatcher,
whatever.
but that's not being asked here. I do wonder why they couldn't put that accessory structure to the back. It looks like there might be room for it. I understand that's not, for us to say either. So I've got mixed feelings about it. It's unique and want somebody to put something that is in keeping with Franklin, but I'm just not sure. I have mixed emotions.
Can I answer any of those questions?
Sure.
So to answer your question about the pond, they would have to dig down deep if they were, because a pond's not a pond if it's only 2 or 3 foot deep. It's just gonna be a mosquito hole. So we've not been told that they plan on
Sure.
having a pond right in front of their house.
Sure.
So we're gonna have to figure out a way to get water out of there.
Okay.
So, and to be honest with you, and this doesn't show it, but we all know they're probably gonna have a swimming pool back there, and that's why that thing's shaped the way it is.
Oh, maybe so.
100%.
I will say you might want to get with Greg Gamble because I think they're going to have some dirt over on their project like use for fill.
Well, I know Greg well, so I probably will.
All right, any other questions or discussion? I do think I'll just add, just looking at the layout, if they did flip it, it would limit the yard. You kind of got floodway and flowway fringe, I think, on the back edge of the property too.
There's 500 years in the property, there's 100 on the edge, so we're trying to just get, we're trying to get out as much as possible. And if there's any property, there's probably a lot of properties, but any property that maybe not deserves, but could get a side yard there instead of a front yard on Mac Hatcher, this would be it. Again, we're not even asking for a side yard, we're just asking for 30 feet. So,
And I will say
This
this, from-
property has some serious unique,
yeah,
with a triangular pie-shaped lot.
and from a privacy standpoint.
Topo is one of the criteria.
Yeah,
I mean, I can tell you the inverts of those pipes that TDOT put in, they're the ones that need to be come out there and fix this. I mean, that invert at the top on the, I guess that would be the north side, it's lower than the elevation at the property line. Yeah, it's just 647.8, and it's 648 at the property line. So, yeah,
right.
we just want to try to get as far away from all that as we can.
So during a heavy rain, it may be a water feature. All right, so we got a motion for approval and we've got a second. That's to encroach up to 30 feet into the 60-foot front yard setback, or the front setback along Mac Hatcher. All right, let's go one by one on the vote. So Board Member Skills,
Approve.
Board Member Langley approve, Board Member Smith,
Deny.
and Board Member
Approve.
Fleischauer.
Approve.
All right, so we got 3 to 1
Yep.
approval on the variance.
Thank you.
All right. Let me flip all my pages here, and I think that is the last item. Is there a motion for?
Motion
German.
to. Yes,
Jeff's ready to roll here.
yes.
I second.
All right, Jeff is the motion, and then second, Board Member Smith. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, everyone have a great night.